Welcome back. I'm happy to introduce season 5 of Make Your Move, which continues to tell the stories of veterans who have made their move into successful post-military careers. There's a special focus to this new season. It's called The Military Effect. The Military Effect is a book by Scott Manthorne in which 50 veterans share their unique elements of their stories and how those elements continue to play a role in their career success. But the military effect is also a movement that over time will help communities outside of the military community better understand how and why veterans are so incredibly unique and why they must be a part of your understanding of how it is that we're able to live as we do in this great country. During season 5, I'll interview each of the 50 subjects of the book. Their stories are incredible, inspiring, and thought-provoking. They served across the military at all ranks and around the world. They've seen and been a part of something so much bigger than themselves, and each shares gems and nuggets that I know you'll find value in. We'll hear from people like Robert Owens, who at 71 years of age rode across the Atlantic Ocean, Tammy Laird, who works helping veterans in need of healing to find their way, Mike Cirilli, who's gone on to multiple entrepreneurial endeavors, to include high-adventure documentaries filmed on multiple continents and previewed across the country at red carpet events, Garth Massey, an inspiring speaker and leadership coach leading others to great heights, Misty Cook, who went on to carve a highly unique niche, serving a very specific category of veteran, effectively guiding veterans to start and accelerate their own consulting careers, and so many more, 50 to be exact. The season will begin with an episode where I interview Scott Manthorne himself. As mentioned, Scott is the creator of the concept of the military effect. He's my first guest, and he'll set the stage for what I know will be our best season of Make Your Move to date. Join us as we surge through the podcast critical 100th episode during this exciting season. Here we go with the man himself, Scott Manthorne. Scott Manthorne, the man is here. This whole series is based on your work. So, Scott, I'm glad to have you here.
Thank you so much, Gene, for allowing the opportunity to come in. And I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you. So it's what comes around goes around.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. I wouldn't be here if it weren't for you. It's a mutual benefit. And, isn't that what networking's all about?
Oh, yeah, no doubt about that.
So how did you become this master networker?
30 years of accelerated mistakes. I think anyone who becomes good at something has to try a lot of times before they figure out the formula. So networking and repetition over time leads to higher outcome, right? That's typical in almost anything you do.
Well, Scott, the intro touched on some of your outstanding qualities and your professional success, but let's maybe dig into the recognition, the self-assessment that you had something here in your ability to network and the whole concept of the network effect and how that led to the military effect.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only crossover between the two books is that I saw the chance to tell stories. The network effect does that very quickly with very, very short stories and a very large audience, over 87 contributors to that book. I wasn't sure the military effect where it was going to go, and I knew I wanted to tell stories, but I didn't really know what the scope of the stories was going to be. So that was a journey along the way, having conversations with people like you and understanding the different variations of the journey of each of the men and women that are in the book, and then how networking communication relates to that journey and success.
Can you think of where the idea germinates from?
I can't.
Something put this in your head as, hey, I'm going to go talk to 50 military people.
I mean, there's a real short explanation on the front of the book, but I think if I was to dive into it, it goes back to when I was a teen and I was made aware of community and giving back. My father was a JC, So I always saw servitude. That was really my closest connection, I even think, to the military back then. Um, and it carried on with me over the years. I've always been involved in some kind of service model, not for profits boards, typical support engines, and also volunteering directly. Um, After the network effect was done, I was in a period where I needed to reassess and re-engage in some new opportunities. And I was kind of over with a lot of the mainstream not-for-profits that I'd been involved in and was looking for something new. And that's where I kind of swung towards the military. And I'm like, is there something here? Is there some organizations that I can support, right? Wounded warriors, things that everyone hears about. And that's where I think the journey started with Suzanne Leskow, who's in the book, and Raymond Jackson, who's not in the book, but brought me several of the authors, conversations with the two of them that started to lead to more introductions. And I was really on a fact-finding mission for nonprofit opportunities to start with. And I think very quickly after having conversations with just a few of the veterans, I realized that there was something more here.
Had you had exposure to the military as an adult or as a youth?
My mother's uncle was Navy, but he passed away when I was in my early teens. I barely remember him, and I barely remember the stories that he told when I was so young. So I really didn't have a connection to the military that I would talk about normally. I was not really engaged, sadly, as a civilian in any aspect of the military community, and was a typical US consumer executive, did my thing, right? Saw what was happening over here, saw the movies, said thank you on occasion, but focused down and got away. So I had no network, no connection of any value in the military whatsoever before August 15th of last year, 2023.
You're reflecting the overwhelming majority of the population in that it is such a small minority that actually participates in military service. And many of those come to it through some form of legacy connection. And that opportunity to engage and understand the military is not always present. And in most cases, it's not present. So what you described is, I think, very typical of an American, living their life.
It's the unknown community. And it's amazing as I talk to people that are getting first exposure. When I mention the numbers, 7% of the US based population, nearly 20 million people are part of this military family. It's a massive portion of this country. But yet I think if you were to ask some people straight up, to be honest, they would say, okay, great. Like, I'm living my life. And I'm not saying that everyone is self-centered and more focused on themselves than others, but let's be real with what's going on in the world right now. A lot of people just want to have no obstacles to their success of their life. And most of the respect that's given back to the military community starts with the government doing what they can do, extends out to some Fortune 500 companies that have taken it on their shoulders to do what they can do. But is this country embracing its military? No. At 9/11, yes. At other times in history, yes. Right now, no.
So you had some contact with Suzanne and Raymond, and they helped you sort of chalk talk the idea here. Did you sketch out the book, or did you just jump into a few interviews and see where it took you?
I realized that there was something more here. I started to construct what I thought would make sense for a book, and I picked 50 because of the 50 original states, right? And then I picked an equal number of men and women because I have a daughter and I wanted to have equal representation of men and women in the book. It's not an equal representation of the military, but that wasn't the point. Um, it was my entire network that helped to bring me the 50 men and women that fit into the book, because I spoke to many more than 50. But there was a method to the madness in finding those 24 ladies and those 26 men from those 5 branches, right? Unfortunately, Space Force did not make it in. That's my fault, no one else's. Um, but perhaps at a future period of time they will. And then you were nice enough to bring me into the Coasties and George and have a representation from that important branch.
Well, and you and I came together through an unusual connection with a colleague at the U.S. Super Yacht Association. Not not a typical veteran connection.
No, and if I was to source, and I do in the back of the book, if I was to source where all of the introductions came from, they were very diverse. They came from a lot of my different civilian relationships. Some were secondhand. There could have been a few that were third hand. So there's a lot of people that are connected into the community in different ways. And hopefully, by bringing this collection of stories together, it will provide another example of important conversations that need to happen more often.
Thinking about the interviews, is there is there a thread that runs through all of them or many of them, or are there some themes that emerged? And then maybe we can talk about, were any of those a surprise to you, or did they reinforce stereotypes or break stereotypes?
Well, I wrote the book in a systematic way that I felt that all readers would appreciate. So all 50 stories are set up the same way. All 50 stories have 5 of the same starting points. So every person was interviewed and asked why they chose to serve, what their story of transition is, what they're up to now, lessons they learned along the way, and then what the military effect, that verbiage, means to them. I mean, commonalities. Again, as a civilian looking at the military network, the obvious things came to light. The humble character of these men and women, the love for each other, the loyalty, the fierce competition, the never-ending drive to want things and people to be better, the love for the country. What I learned very near the end was that a man or woman who chooses to serve doesn't choose for the term of their service to serve. The day they start to serve will never end. So you may take off that uniform, but you never stop being a member of the military family, and you carry with that the responsibility of the entire force, the entire community, and all of the things that come with each of the men and women that you touch. And I did not comprehend that in a way that I think needs to be comprehended when 2 people speak to each other. Empathy is one thing, right? Understanding that person as a whole is another thing.
I'm not sure that most military members appreciate the ongoing nature of the connection until they become veterans themselves. I think a 20 or 30 or even a 40-year-old military member isn't necessarily thinking about, I'm this for life.
Well, again, this is outside looking in, so I can't sit here in the chair of anyone who's active duty service or a veteran. But my perception is that, and I had this with professional athletes, when you're in, you're focused on operating at the highest tempo possible. And you have an unbelievable myriad of things that you have to manage in order to be at that operational level. And so external distractions can be dangerous to many, if not all. So I value the fact that many men and women are hyper focused when they're in, And then when they come out, they really have to flip the script. But I appreciate that because it's not going on a basketball court. It's not swinging at a golf ball. It's not kicking something through a square, right? This is a way different level of tempo with a whole different set of responsibilities.
What jumped out as something you didn't expect to hear? And you don't have to name names, but were there situations that came about that or that came to light that were surprising?
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to mention the author's name on this interview, but I did speak with one of our 50, and they had a very interesting role within the military that honored many men and women. And this individual got involved emotionally in these ceremonies that were taking place, and it became a significant emotional drain on their capabilities to perform. Number one, I didn't even know that facet of the military existed. Number two, I didn't think about the repetition of the emotional baggage that they were carrying, as any human being would, being in the position that they were. That was really wild. Um, I could sit here and talk all day long because what's happened since this book, Gene, is I have extended my network 4x in the military since. And now I get to talk to even a wider audience that continues to bring amazing things to the table.
Were there some themes associated with the post active duty successes that your subjects uh, either demonstrated or were struggling to achieve?
Yeah, and again, it's hard to put 50 people in the same bucket, but I think, and this book is very highly representative of entrepreneurs as opposed to your mainstream employees. But I think that the general theme was I'm not going to give up. Um, I'm going to keep seeking opportunity and knowledge. It's a very good representation to me of the general public because I saw in my 50 the same things that many people that I know deal with. So I think you have to be very careful to label someone at all in the world. This person went to Brown, this person's from Rhode Island, this person likes the color yellow. I mean, we all have labels, right? We all have labels and we all have baggage. But I think the fighting spirit, some of those training lessons have absolutely resonated through the 50. Everybody talked about service, of course. And I think that they will continue to. I mean, in order to be a good teacher, you have to be a good student.
Did any sort of negatives come through or things that people seem to be struggling with that might have been a surprise?
Oh yeah, the suicide conversation was a lot across a lot of these discussions. The dark challenges that many brothers and sisters were facing from these men and women and still are. Obviously, there's a heightened level of challenge for those that come out of the military versus someone who comes out of the NBA, right? I was careful to acknowledge the challenges, acknowledge the pitfalls, acknowledge the darkness, but not highlight it. First of all, I'm not qualified to do that. Second of all, I wanted this book to be a positive reflection with a positive pop to it. But I also asked all 50 of the authors to endorse and agree to the story that was theirs. I mean, this is your name's on the front of the story, not mine. Your words are in the story, not mine. So this is you telling the world about you, and you have to be okay with that.
So Scott, you've obviously successfully written best-selling books before, and you set out to make this one a bestseller, certainly based on content, but also based on the method of execution. And you talked about a pretty specific format that you used. Having written a few books, I recognize that marketing is a huge part of the effort. And how will this book come to market? How will people learn about it? And what are you doing to make sure that it gets the maximum exposure opportunity over the coming months?
Well, first of all, we came up with a centralized location for the book, which is themilitaryeffect.com. So that website will house all the information on the book and all of our buttons to all of our social media channels, of which we're on 5 social media channels right now.
So we'll have
We
all of this in the show notes, just for those who are listening.
we will have an aggressive campaign over the summer across social media that will share stories, tidbits, other elements of the book that will be in short form on all of these social media platforms. We are going to do an official book launch at AUSA, the Association of the U.S. Army, on October 14th in DC, where many of our authors will also come together and join us. I am also going to embark on a campaign, 50 podcasts in 50 days. That will start the day after the book launch in October. And leading up till then, because we have such a diverse audience of authors, there's going to be a lot of individual interviews and opportunities to connect with these authors that will all be shared on these various social media channels.
50 podcasts in 50 days. Tell us about that. This does not count as one of the 50, right?
Well, the idea came out of wordsmithing, because sales and marketing is wordsmithing. So 50 stories of 50 authors on 50 podcasts in 50 days. What I'm going to do that's not expected is I'm not going to hold any of those 50 podcasts on a military podcast. I'm going to go into sports and entertainment. I'm going to go into health and wellness. I'm going to go into lifestyle and longevity. I'm going to go into arts and entertainment. I'm going to go into travel and technology. I'm going to go into all the sectors that need to hear this story, this diverse civilian audience, and let them hear these stories on channels that they subscribe to, because oftentimes the military podcasts are listened to by military individuals. So I'm not worried about this book making it through the network of the military. That's going to take care of itself. It's important that a civilian reads these stories and a civilian understands what a military veteran's capabilities are and understands what the military community is about from a civilian point of view.
Sounds like a master networker has put some thought into this.
It's been a lot of feedback from a lot of different angles. Now, Gene, I'm talking to a lot of the Fortune 500s. I've had active conversations with companies like Amazon, Walmart, Bank of America, Verizon, Salesforce, you name it, at top levels, both with the military employees and with the civilian employees. And there's an absolute need to bridge more understanding between those that served and those that did not, because they're working together. So you have to have a common click. And unless you know enough about the two people, you're just not going to work at the highest vibration level. And that's a challenge, to figure out how to get a civilian to understand a military individual, and really for a military individual to understand a civilian even more. So I'm hoping this will bridge, or I can help bridge, these conversations where both sides will have a level of understanding and a level of respect for what's being shared.
So the book has there are ways to measure the success of a book, right? In sales, or does it hit certain lists? But your objective is much bigger than that. And the message you're hoping to instill and connect with industry is much broader. How do you know when you've succeeded in this effort?
I think it'll be individual discussion. I think it'll be corporate feedback. I think it'll be volume of things that are sold. I'm creating right now a 40 company network, and those 40 companies will be pretty important to understand how this process is moving forward. They're also getting involved with me and the military effect because they understand not only the need but the opportunity, because business is not about one or the other, it's about both. And we can sit here and say good business is doing good, but let's be honest, okay? Good business is being profitable. So how do you balance the two? How do you help this population base of men and women who served become more effective, more efficient, and stay where they are longer, retention? And how do you affect the bottom line of the company at the same time? Right? And again, I'm not schooled for anything but marketing and sales, so my capability needs to stop at a certain point. I need to be able to open conversation, but I'm not trained well enough to close a lot of these things.
Well, Scott, this as we wrap up here, this has obviously been a, a substantial project that has been incredibly time consuming. It's been a great application of your talents. As you look out over the next year, 2 years, what does this project look like?
Gene, all I can say is I feel like I've gone from 0 to 50 very fast. I'm guesstimating that I've spent about 2,000 hours now with men and women in service or as veterans. So I've been blessed to get to meet them, develop relationships, and learn at a very fast clip, which has quickly made me a civilian subject matter expert. I have made a 4-year civilian commitment to the 50 in the book, to the men and women, to you, to advocate as much as I can on behalf of what I think is a movement. I think this is hopefully a shift to bring a large group of the U.S. population base closer to those that they're not connected to at the moment. And my guess is that when I get to my 4 years, I'm going to keep going. I can't see a light at the end of the tunnel here where there's perfect harmony. There's too many issues here. Military spouses with an eight-time unemployment rate. That's unbelievable. The homeless issue, which is obvious and on TV, but the food issue, insecurity issue is not on TV, but it's also significant, and then you've got all of the things that are going on within the structure of corporate America, the perception of this business person to that veteran, educations of higher learning, OMG. There's so many great things that can happen here. And can we help one more veteran, one more active duty service feel more empowered to get to the level of their life that they want to after they came home from carrying a weapon and protecting us?
What a great story. Scott, thanks so much for being with us, and thanks for all that you've done to bring this project to fruition.
The Military Effect. Find it, read it, love it.